We're joined by our friend Mike Baker. He is my CIA brother from another mother. He is also the host of the PDB podcast, Presidential Daily Brief podcast, which is doing huge numbers, doing great stuff there. Mr. Baker, always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
What's going to happen in Venezuela? Want to just tell me, you want to skip to the end of the movie? Like, what's going on here? We're blowing up these boats in the Caribbean, the narco boats. Venezuela is a narco state, which I think needs to be more part of the conversation. The leadership there makes a lot of money off of the export of fentanyl out of their country and into our country, also cocaine, heroin, other stuff.
Yeah.
What are we doing with these strikes, you think, and where's this going?
Yeah, it is fascinating. Look, it's a little bit, obviously, no pun intended, uncharted waters. And what are we up to? We're above 80 individuals killed so far in these strikes. I think, look, setting aside, the legalities of all of this and just looking at it from an operational perspective, it comes down to, okay, well, if you believe that the intelligence is credible and that the targeting is well thought through, do I have a problem with going after narco traffickers? No, I don't. We spent decades, right? I was involved in the drug wars while I was with the agency, spent a lot of time in counter narcotics operations in parts of the world. And they always called it a war on drugs. And it never really was, right? In the sense that we never really had a chance to win it. You could destroy the facility, a cooking house, a warehouse somewhere, interdict a large shipment, and it never really impacted anything. Didn't affect the street price, didn't affect how much gear was stored in warehouses around the world, in part because, you've got the demand issue, and we've never been good at dealing with the demand side of things. So now we're calling it a war on drugs, and it is actually looking like a war on drugs. The other part of this question is, what are we doing with Venezuela? And I have to assume that the massive military buildup in the effort or war on drugs is all about putting pressure on Maduro and, more importantly, probably putting pressure on those around him to convince someone or a group of individuals there or advisors or military senior officers, whomever, that it's time for Maduro to go. So I have to assume that we're operating on two tracks here.
Now, I don't know if you saw this part of it, Mike, but to me, I was concerned, okay, do we want to be, even if the side effect of, let's say, U.S. operations against the cartels is the toppling of the Maduro regime, people worry about that regime change situation. We've seen that go badly elsewhere. But then I saw Maduro singing the John Lennon song, Imagine, and I was like, this guy's got to go, because that's the worst song in the world.
Exactly. Not only that, it was the worst rendition of the worst song ever.
True.
So, I think, look, it is. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on this. It is highly unlikely that we're going into Venezuela militarily to, in a direct conflict with the Venezuelan government and military, to oust Maduro, right? So I think the hoped-for scenario, again, is this pressure campaign. He probably won't leave on his own volition, but others may convince him that that's the only thing he can do. So you look at that and you think, okay, fine. You're right. Regime change is a very ugly thing, but this is not Libya. It's not Iraq. In the sense that I'm not calling for regime change. What I'm saying is they're not apples to apples, right? So you've got a legitimate opposition government that's sitting out there. Maduro, and, everybody, even people on the left, are going to have to look at this and go, yeah, the evidence shows that Maduro stole that election outright. So you do have an opposition in waiting. Now, whether, there's a sense of survivability on the part of the senior military there in Venezuela, and they say, yeah, okay, now it's time to work with the opposition because we want to save our own asses. I don't think a transition necessarily would be, sort of this ugly scene that we've seen elsewhere played out sometimes when you get regime change and then it just all heads south.
So we've got this Operation Southern Spear is the name of it, a buildup of American naval forces in the Caribbean, the largest since the Cuban Missile Crisis and the blockade of Cuba in 1962. The Gerald Ford aircraft carrier is now in the Caribbean, which I think is our biggest carrier.
It is. It is.
15,000 troops in the region. You know, Marco Rubio has I was going to say he has a large role. He has many large roles, actually, in this administration. He has more than one role. But he is I think, a dedicated anti-communist in the best sense, and that includes the regime in Cuba. If we do get let's say the Maduro regime, instead, toppling makes it sound like we did it. What if it implodes? What if it crumbles and is no longer in a position or no longer willing to subsidize the Cuban government with a whole lot of oil, without which Cuba is basically screwed? Feels like there's a chance for a 2-for-1 here, Mike.
Look at that. It's a Black Friday sale. It could happen, and you're absolutely right to point out that this is not happening in a bubble, meaning it's not just Venezuela and U.S., staring each other down. Russia and China, certainly Cuba, they've all got a stake in this, right? And even Iran, right? Maduro's been turning to Iran even for, hope for support, trying to say, look at this, what the imperialist dogs are doing to me. So there are other people at play here. When folks talk about, the U.S. is doing this simply for Venezuela's resources. Okay, that's that old trope that we always get, right? Oh, they're moving into Iraq because of the oil. They're doing it. Oh God, you hear that one more time. I mean, I've had conversations recently where, a couple of people, very intelligent people, but they were completely convinced that this, cartel of the Suns that keeps getting referred to as the kind of the pseudo organization that exists as a narco-trafficking network, sponsored by the state in Venezuela, that was a product of creation from the CIA, right? I had to listen to a conversation about that. And again, from smart people, but, it's you get these things that get rolled out and you look and you think, okay, is there even any reason to respond to that, right? Because you just give it credibility. So, but I
always have to point out to people, Mike, that people who get into this lane, they can either the CIA is a bunch of Machiavellian geniuses that can do anything anywhere in the world whenever they want, or they're completely useless and incompetent. They can't have both, though, right? Like they can't be super geniuses who could do anything anywhere, and they're totally worthless. Because I've heard that from people. I'm like, I think those things go in contradiction.
Yeah, no, they do. But usually what I hear is that somehow the CIA is responsible for everything, and but it's always, and then it's typically backfilled by the idea that the U.S. should not ever do anything ever overseas. We have no right to do anything anywhere, and somehow then we would just have this peaceful community of nations, and anyhow, I don't want to disappear down that rabbit hole, but I guess I was about to. But the problem with Venezuela is that you do have other players there. The Russians have a big stake in this. They don't want to see this turn. They certainly would at this time when they're losing influence in a variety of ways. The idea that they would lose an important foothold in our backyard doesn't sit well with Putin. China's been playing out there purely for their own self-interest in terms of getting their hands on the resources like we get accused of, but nobody ever mentions that about the Chinese regime. So there's a lot at play here. I just don't think that what we're looking at, and again, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I don't believe the White House strategy is going to be to put the military into Venezuela for a direct conflict with the government and the military.
One thing I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot here, Mike. For anyone who's seen you on Fox or your podcast, the PDB podcast, which is fantastic, and people should go check it out. You look like what I think a lot of people think a secret agent man looks like. You got the square jaw, all American. You're a manly man. And the American young men, or rather American young men, are increasingly wanting people, or they want the society around them to stop making them feel like being a man is a bad thing. The Democrats are unable to reach these young men because of the way they've talked about toxic masculinity and all this stuff. Pete Hegseth has gone into the Pentagon and has really just refocused on war fighting and also, let's be honest, a kind of unabashed masculinity in the way we fight wars. Is there a way to make the CIA badass, or at least less, less sort of smarmy bureaucrat than it is right now? I'm wondering how you feel about that, because we could use some help.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, look, you know this as well, better than I do, that the agency is a real mix, right? You've got all sorts of folks, banging around the corridors there and in our places overseas. And, look, it takes all types, but I agree 100% with the idea that we need to be focused. Right? The agency is a risk-taking organization, so goddamn it, we should act like one, right? And we don't need. Look, the Directorate of Administration plays an important role. It's a very important directorate, right? I know a lot of good people there. They keep the trains running on time. They do a lot of things, but we kind of disappeared down the same rabbit hole that a lot of bureaucracies did over the past handful of years, imagining somehow that we were like a corporate culture, right? And that's not helpful to a risk-taking organization. So, yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit delicate. I have a lot of good friends over there, and I know some are on kind of both sides of this issue, and I get it. But I would like to see a return to a real risk-taking mindset. You know what it's like, right? I mean, we were there.
Yeah, it's critical for morale. I mean, if you can make all this money, if you can come out of school and make 200 to 300 grand at Google, like why go work at Langley if you're going to be like lectured and hounded over DEI nonsense and like trans identification day all the time? I mean, that's what I hear from the people over there. Yeah,
you got to move that out, right? And again, I keep going back to the same thing. Look, we saw cycles, right? If you get your ass kicked up on Capitol Hill because an operation or a direction that you were going in goes bad, then suddenly, that risk versus gain calculation recalibrates, and then you get a period of time where management doesn't want to put their head over the wall because they don't want to get their ass kicked again up on Capitol Hill, and so you don't take the risks. Right. And then eventually that recalibrates because the world requires it. Some issue somewhere means you got to get back on track.
Well, basically, Mike, we're going to need you to be the Pete Hegseth of the CIA, but that's a whole other. We'll have you back for that conversation, but you got to go in there and crack some skulls and kick some asses and make spies great again. But Mike Baker, everybody, go check.
Write a note to that effect. Send it to the White House, and I'd be happy to pack my roll and head on out.
I'll let them know. Mike Baker, everybody, go check out the PDV podcast. Mike, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, man. Take care.
In the 4+ years since we've been on the air, Pure Talk has been a steadfast sponsor of this program, and we really appreciate them, and they really appreciate you. That's why they're giving you this incredible offer. Unlimited talk, unlimited text, unlimited data with a 30-gig hotspot for just $29.95 a month for life. That's their lowest price ever. This is Pure Talk's top-tier plan, normally $65 a month, now through December 7th, $29.95 a month. You're saving over 50% a month every month for life. And if you're wondering, yes, that's on their 5G network. This offer is extremely short-lived, only goes up to December 7th, 2025. So go now and make that switch today. Dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck to make the switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. Dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck to switch to Pure Talk. Taxes and fees not included. Some restrictions apply. All right.